100 years ago, survival was at the top of the list.
Then freedom, patriotism, the Second World War,
Civil rights.
then technology, comfort, entertainment.
Now it's security, health, prosperity, all competing for the same thing, our attention.
100 years from now, the order will change again.
But here's what doesn't change. Wherever your heart goes, your life follows.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Crossroads Online. So glad that you're with us today, and we are in week number 2 of our series. We're looking at a series entitled Ducks in a Row. And I have to say, I don't know about you, but it feels a lot of times like life throws a lot of ducks at us. And it's not always easy to keep all the ducks in a row. I don't know if you feel like that sometimes, but I love after this last week, the first week of our series was last week, and a lady texted me this, and I thought it was great. It kind of it made me feel a little bit better, honestly. She says this: my ducks are absolutely not in a row. In fact, I don't even know where some of my ducks are. I'm pretty sure one of them is actually a pigeon. I think that's pretty good. I don't know if you feel like that sometimes as well. You're like, I don't know where all my ducks are, and I think there's a pigeon involved somehow. And so here's what I want to say to you today. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, ducks in a row, this is great. We're going to get like the perfect organizational system so I can get all my stuff done. You know, like I need the productivity hack here or whatever. That's not what this sermon is. And in fact, you can find that information lots of places. There's all kinds of people that will help you get your life a little bit more organized. But Jesus does something different. He changes our perspective about all the priorities of life, all the things that life throws at us, all the tasks and the to-do list that come at us on any given day. And this is what Reed said last week as he kicked us off in the series. I love this. He says, the whole series is about this. How do we love the right things in the right way, in the right order, for the right reasons? How do we love things, the right things, in the right way, in the right order, for the right reasons? And can I say, that is so hard to do consistently. It is so hard to do. But that's where we're going today, and that's what this series is all about. I just want to say it is so good to be back. I was at different campuses throughout the summer, and we had an incredible time. All of our communicators going to different campuses, and then, of course, I had a chance to get away with my family last week. I just got back from Deep Creek, got to see my parents, got to hang out with my brother. We were all out in Deep Creek together, and that was a whole lot of fun. I got a little photo here. This is the whole fam all together. And that's my brother, Ryan. Now, I love my brother, Ryan. We get along. Raise your hand if you have a sibling, had a sibling, whatever. Now, this one's a little tougher. Raise your hand if maybe just occasionally there's a little bit of a sibling rivalry between you two. You know, I mean, right, I think you guys get it. I have a brother, and, 99% of the time we get along. But my brother and I, we like to go on bike rides together. And so we were out on a bike ride. And here's the thing. When my brother and I are on a bike ride together, we can't just have like a leisurely stroll enjoying the sunshine out at Deep Creek. It silently kind of becomes some friendly competition. And I'm not trying to throw my brother under the bus, but it's kind of his fault. I mean, he's the one that starts the competition. And so, before we know it, we're racing up hills and everything else. And so, I don't know, you've probably never experienced that. If you have a sibling, there's no rivalry and you get along all the time. I'm sure that's true. But I want to take a look at a set of siblings here today. In a passage, we're going to take a look at Luke chapter 10. And there's a little bit of a tension between these two siblings underneath the surface of this passage. So let's take a look. Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Well, that's nice. And so we're going to have a party. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work all by myself? Please tell her to help me. This is Jesus' response, verse 41. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, only one thing. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So here's the scene. It's a dinner party, and preparations are happening. You have two women, and they're completely opposite. I mean, they're in the same house, in the same situation, and they're having two completely different experiences in this moment. And you've got Martha on the one hand, and she's like getting stuff done in the kitchen, and she's cooking, and I mean, she's like Martha Stewart in here, getting all kinds of stuff. She had a whole pile of stuff that she had to get done. She knew the to-do list, and she was getting it done. And then there's this other woman, her sister, Mary, and she's just sitting at the feet of Jesus. And this passage, as you look at these two women and what's happening here, really points to what we're talking about. The priorities of life. How do we get them in the right order? What does that mean? And this verse about Martha is so telling. It says here that Martha was what? Distracted. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. In other words, Martha had some ducks that she knew she had to get in a row. She had some things she had to get done. And Martha, like so many of us, was just looking at the pile of stuff that had to happen in order for this dinner party to go off right. She was looking at the to-do list. Now, I'm sure none of us, we never do that, right? But I mean, come on, let's be honest. Of course we do. We all think about the to-do list, all the priorities of life that seem to come at us on any given day. And for so many of us, what I recognize is that all of those things that we have to do, many of them are very good. Many of them are important. Many of them are things you have to get done, just like Martha had to get this done. But here's what I don't want us to miss, and what I think is under the surface of this passage today, is that sometimes we get so distracted by doing good that we actually miss what's better. Martha was so distracted by doing something that was good that she missed what was better, and it was Jesus sitting right in her living room. And so we're going to talk today about how to get our ducks in a row, but I want to give you a little picture of this because I think it might help. We're talking about ducks in a row, and so this is how I think most of us kind of think it should look, or how we hope it looks in our lives. We think, okay, I'm going to get my ducks in a row. Okay, look at this. I got all these ducks, all these tasks that have to happen, and we think, I know what I'm going to do. This is the way I envision my life. I'm going to make sure my ducks are in a row. I've got my family. I've got my job, I've got to make sure, like, there's house stuff that happens, and there's that project that I thought about in the spring, but I've never really been able to do it, and then I've got, like, this group chat that I haven't responded to in 12 weeks, and I know that's a duck I got to get in a row, and we kind of think this is what life should look like. Got all my priorities straight, ducks in a row. Can I just be honest, and I hope you're honest with me as well today? My life never looks like this. I never can seem to get all of my ducks in a row. In fact, I think for most of us, if we're going to be honest, it's a little more like what that lady shared with me in the text messages. Feels like I don't know where my ducks are all the time. In fact, I would say our lives look a little bit more like this. I just got like a pile of ducks, and I'm not even sure. I think I lost a couple ducks. I'm not really sure where they are. And then sometimes what happens is, like, you already have the whole stack of things that has to happen, the to-do list, and then something really big occurs, and it's like all of a sudden you got a big giant duck that just shows up in the middle of your life, and before you know it, you're like, what am I doing? Like, I can't, there's no chance that I have at keeping these things in a row or organized. And I don't know about you, but that is a little picture of my life sometimes. Now, this is what makes this passage so tough, though, is when I look at all of these ducks, when I see this picture, all of those things are important. Those are like things we have to do. It's like what life is all about. You have to pay the mortgage. You have to get the stuff done, right? And so none of those things are necessarily bad things. They're all really good things. Martha was doing a good thing. It's not like Martha was sinning here. And in fact, I think it would be easier if what Martha was doing was bad. This sermon would be easy. I'd just be like, don't do that. Stop sinning. Like that'd be a much easier sermon. It's actually much harder because what Martha's doing is actually a good thing. She's serving Jesus dinner. That can't be bad, right? But what's the problem that's under the surface here is what Jesus says. It says that she was distracted. And this word distracted is used one time, only once in the entire scripture, and it's this word, peripaseo. And that word peripaseo, this is the word Jesus uses for Martha in this passage. It literally means that I'm pulled in every direction, that I'm like torn in two different directions. Like, I know I have this I have to do, I know I have that I have to do, and I'm not quite sure how to do it all or what the priority actually is. I think that says something about Martha, actually, because she was not failing at hospitality. She was like knocking it out of the park. This was going to be a great dinner that she was putting together. And that actually made it harder in a way because she was doing something good and she was good at it. And so because of that, she was like, doubling down on this thing. And so, but underneath the surface, there's the word here. It says distracted. And this is a word that I think is it's so fitting for where we are. It's so fitting for our culture because I think that this word peripaseo is a picture of how we live our lives so often. We don't mean to, but we live our lives kind of distracted, torn in different directions. I mean, the phone is coming at us and the emails and the task lists and all the things that have to happen in life, and we're pulled in so many different directions. No one wakes up on a Tuesday and just says, you know what? I hope that I just am distracted today. I hope that I'm so busy and I've got so many things happening in life today that I'm too busy to actually have time for God. No one says that. No one says, I hope I'm so distracted by my phone that I miss Jesus in my life today. And so, can I just be honest with you? As I say this to you, I am a little bit convicted because I'm not the guy that gets this right all the time. I mean, I'm just like you. I've got all kinds of stuff going on. In fact, let's just be honest. I spent like 20 hours this week writing a sermon, 15 hours this week writing a sermon about Jesus. But there were moments where I had a hard time finding 20 minutes to be with Jesus, where I wasn't distracted by something or something wasn't coming up on my phone or a notification. And so here's what I've discovered, and I've learned it the hard way, to be honest with you, is that sometimes it's so much easier to serve Jesus than it is to actually be with Jesus. It's just easier. I mean, I know what I'm supposed to do when I'm serving Jesus. I show up, I do the thing, and I feel like, wow, I've done it, I checked the box. But can I tell you, if you spend time serving Jesus, and you don't actually spend time with Jesus, it's going to drain you. It will rob you of joy. You're going to find yourself burnt out. And I think that's really where Martha was at the end of this. She says this, and you can kind of almost hear the desperation, the burnout in her voice, verse 40. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to work by myself? Tell her to help me. I love this. This is like the classic sibling moment where it's like two siblings aren't getting along. Maybe this has happened with your kids. And, Martha's sitting there. She's talking to Jesus, and Mary is literally right next to her. She's not talking to her sister. She's like, Jesus, can you tell my sister Mary that Martha is upset? I'm not speaking with her. And Mary's like, I'm sitting right here. Why don't you just, if you're upset, you can just talk to me. You know what I mean? But this question that is on Martha's heart is, I think, the question that's on many of our hearts a lot of times. And it's this: Lord, don't you care? Lord, don't you care? I think we all ask that question. Lord, don't you care? Blank, fill in the blank. What is it for you? Don't you care? Don't you see what I'm dealing with? Don't you realize and recognize what I've done, the situation I'm in, whatever it is? And that's basically what Martha's saying. She's like, look, Jesus, look at all this stuff I'm doing for you. And she has this deep need for validation from Jesus. And the question underneath the surface is, don't you care? And I think we ask that as well. And let me just say this. It's not that Jesus didn't care. Jesus did care. In fact, he cared so much that Jesus looked at Martha and he said, it's not about what you do. I want to spend time with you, Martha. He cared so much about her that he was like, the stuff, the dinner is not the thing that's important. I want to spend time with you. But Martha seemed to miss that. And so Jesus gives her this invitation to sit with Jesus. He says, just sit down. I want to sit down with you. And Jesus looks at, what's Jesus' response? You can sense the anxiety and the frustration in Martha's voice. And how does Jesus respond? Does he rise to her level of anxiety? No, he looks right at Martha in her eyes and he says, Martha, Martha. Now, when he says her name twice like that, he looks at her and says her name twice, that's like a way to say, it's like a sign of affection. It's almost like you can imagine Jesus wanting to pull up a chair close to Martha and saying like, hey, I know what I'm about to say to you isn't easy, but it's said in love, and I want you to hear this with my heart, the heart that I have to say it. And so he says her name gently twice. And then Jesus responds. Now, I can tell you this. I can tell you what I would have said in this situation. If someone's upset and they're putting on a party and Martha comes up to me and she's like, why aren't you helping? I would have been like, hey, I can fix it. I would have gone into like Kevin Fix-It mode, I would have said, okay, let's put a game plan together. What needs to get done? We can delegate some responsibilities, right? Like I can chop some carrots. I'm a good carrot chopper. I would, ask if Mary could jump in or whatever. I would have tried to solve the problem. That's not what Jesus does. Jesus doesn't rise to her level of anxiety. He stays so level in this situation. He doesn't try to fix the situation. He speaks directly to Martha's heart. And verse 41, 42, you are worried and upset about many things. He said, I understand that you're worried. I understand that you're upset. These are the words that he's saying here. Both of these words are important. Merimeneo, it's anxiety. I know you have anxiety in your heart. I think we all walk through life and we look at the pile and we think, wow, I get a little bit anxious when I think about all this stuff that actually has to happen in life. And then she's upset. And this word literally means like uproar, commotion. There's something going on in her heart and it's loud. I think she's so worried, she's so upset, she's so anxious. And so in other words, I would say it like this. It wasn't just loud in the kitchen, Martha trying to get things done. There was something loud going on in Martha's heart, and Jesus understood that and spoke directly to it. And so notice this, though. Jesus does not say, stop serving. He doesn't say, like, hey, dinner's not important. Who cares? What you're doing is not a big deal. He never said that once. But he's way, way, way more concerned with what's happening here in Martha's heart than is what's happening in the kitchen. He cares way more about what's happening in her heart than what's happening in the kitchen. And that means that the problem is not her serving. It's great that Martha's serving. That's fantastic. The problem is not that Martha's getting things done. See, Jesus doesn't call her out of the kitchen. He calls her out of her frenzy. He calls her out of her anxiety and her worry and her distraction and her life. And that's why you have Martha running like crazy. And then there's this picture of, and the contrast is so extreme. Martha's crazy getting everything done, and then there's Mary, who's at the feet of Jesus, and she's just content. She's just happy as can be. Now, when I hear at the feet of Jesus, especially in our culture, it's a little bit like, what does that mean? Who sits at someone else's feet? That's a little bit of a strange thing to say. It's not something that we talk about today. But in this culture, when you sat at the feet of a teacher, when you sat at the feet of a rabbi, that's the posture of a student. The teacher would sit, and the students would sit at his feet. And so this is a picture of Jesus as teacher, as Jesus as rabbi. And the shocking thing in this story is that no one would have expected, certainly wasn't accepted in this culture at this time, for a woman to be at the feet of a rabbi learning. But there's Mary. And she's just listening to what Jesus has to say. And Jesus does not send her away. That by itself is scandalous in this story. And Mary is just like, I'm willing to spend time with you. I'm willing to listen to you. And it is striking, the difference. And so then Jesus looks at Martha, and this is what this whole thing hangs on. And this is the lesson I hope we don't miss. He says this, few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. This word is actually a portion. The word a portion is not something that you earn. A portion is something that you receive. See, Martha was trying to earn something. She was trying to earn her way that Jesus would recognize and realize how important she was and what she was doing was important. And so Martha is trying to produce something for Jesus, but Mary is sitting there and she's like just receiving something from Jesus. And then these last five words, and it will not be taken away from her. And that's the whole thing. If you want to get your ducks in a row, you have to make sure that you put the first things first, that you have your first love right. See, everything else that was happening in this house was temporary. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're going to eat the meal. You're going to forget about the meal. You're not even going to remember what the meal was the next week. You're going to put the dishes away. No one is going to remember what was served. But then there's Mary, and what she received in this moment could never be taken away. She received this connection with Jesus. She received something from Jesus that would last. And that's what Jesus is talking about whenever he says, this is better. He's not like saying, you know what, Mary's my favorite, and he's not trying to shame Martha in this situation. He's not saying, wow, Mary's really the holy one here, at the end of the day. He's saying, no, look, what she's doing cannot be taken away from her. In other words, don't get so distracted by doing something good that you miss what's better. Don't get so distracted in life by things that some of them are good, but don't, in the process of that, miss the thing that's better. And Jesus is sitting right in your living room. And so how do we live this out? How do we live this out? I know what you probably think I'm going to say. You probably imagine I'm going to say right now, okay, here's the situation. Everyone needs to do less. We need to cut something out of our lives, simplify, cut back, get your calendars out, learn how to say no, whatever it is. And notice that's not what Jesus said to her. He didn't say stop cooking. He didn't say cooking wasn't important. He never told her to just, hey, you need to quit the kitchen or whatever. And so I'm not telling you to, quit something tomorrow. Don't go quit your job or something like that, right? Because look, at the end of the day, every one of the ducks that we have is important. We all have important things. We have to-do lists. We have things that have to get done, and all of them are important. You know what? At the end of the day, the pile, almost all of the tasks on them, I'm not saying all of them, but almost all of them are things you have to get done. You have to pay the mortgage. Your kids have to get driven somewhere Tuesday at 6:15. Your work is important. Your family is important. Getting the house fixed is important. Whatever it is that's on your list this week. And so hear this. Jesus is not trying to make your life easier. In fact, I don't even think that's not the point of this message, to be honest with you. I think we're all out here trying to wrangle our ducks. And sometimes there's a pigeon that's involved, actually. But what he's offering is for us to have a change in perspective, a shift in our posture, an understanding of what really matters at the end of the day. And it challenges the way that we view all of the tasks in our life, all of the priorities in our lives, all the ducks that we have going on in our lives. And so let me say it like this. At the end of the day, I don't even know if it's about getting our ducks in a row. I think it's about realizing and recognizing that in the midst of the pile, Jesus is right there with you. In the middle of whatever you've got going on, Jesus is in the pile with you. And so there's a line from a preacher that I've been thinking about this week. He says that you can't talk your heart out of loving something. And the issue is that we have all these things that are good, and we have all these things that we need to do, and it's not bad that we have these desires, these loves, these affections, the to-do list, the task list. It's not bad. But you can't argue yourself out of an affection. And in other words, at the end of the day, you kind of love what you love. And there's a lot of things that happen in life and a lot of things that are important and priorities in life. And so the only way to replace one love with another love is when you find a greater love. The only way that you really can shift your priorities in your heart and your life, you can't just force yourself to do it by brute force. I'm just going to will myself to love something else. It doesn't work. The only thing you can do is realize and recognize there's a better love, there's a deeper love, and that's what Mary understood in this. And so let me say it like this. You can't put desire on your calendar. You can try to do it, but it doesn't really work. But you can do this. You can't put yourself in a place where desire grows. You can put yourself in a situation where when you put yourself at the feet of Jesus, this desire begins to grow in your heart as you recognize and realize a deeper love, a greater love. And so here's what I'm going to ask you to do this week. And it might seem a little bit uncomfortable, going to be honest. This week, spend at least 10 minutes with Jesus without any agenda at all. No to-do list, no task list, no Bible study. I don't even know if you need to have your Bible out, to be honest with you. Not a chapter that you have to read. Don't have your journal there. Certainly don't have your phone there. That's one that happens to me sometimes. I'm like, wow, it's game over. I am distracted as soon as that phone is next to me. Like, I don't know. You just feel like compelled to grab it or whatever. And the idea is don't try to finish anything. There's no homework that you're going to show someone at the end of the day. Why? Because at the end of the day, I think the study tools that we have are great. I think Bible studies are great. I think all the devotionals that we put together and that maybe you read, all of those things are fantastic. I'm not saying any of them are bad, but if we're not careful, even the tools that we have to follow Jesus can be just another duck. We have to get in a row, to be honest with you. See, Mary wasn't trying to finish something. She didn't have an agenda. She didn't have a task list. She was receiving something. She had nothing to give, nothing to do for Jesus. She was just receiving. And so here's my ask, is just to spend time at the feet of Jesus. Imagine that you're in his presence this week. And just, there's nothing that you have to give him. You can't give him anything. And just be there willing and ready to receive. And here's what it's going to happen. You're going to sit there for about 90 seconds, and then you're going to think about the thing that you have to do. And when that happens, it's okay. It does not mean that you're bad at this. It doesn't mean that you're incapable of it. It probably just means that you're out of practice, like basically all of us. It might mean that this is like the first time that you've sat down without something that you actually have to do in months, maybe even years. And our minds are so loud, and all the things and the voices and the things that have to happen come so quickly. And so just do your best to move through that and realize and recognize that it will get easier. And see what Jesus has to say to you, because I have a feeling that those 10 minutes are going to be more valuable than the 10 things that you have to do that day, because that's what's going to actually last at the end of the day. Those things cannot be taken away from you. Before I wrap up, I want to fast forward the story of Martha and Mary, because this is not the last time that they show up in Scripture. In fact, months, maybe even years later, Martha and Mary show up in the Bible again in John chapter 11. And at this moment in time, they're going through tragedy. In fact, their brother had just passed away tragically. And you can imagine it's been weeks, and everyone in the house is mourning and wailing and upset. And you can cut the tension with a knife in this house. And they are desperate. And then word comes that Jesus is showing up into town. And so Martha and Mary go out to meet Jesus. And this is verse John 11:32. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she what? She fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." I don't know if Mary or Martha knew what to say to Jesus in this moment, but they knew where to go. They knew to go to the feet of Jesus. Why? Because they'd been there before. This was not the first time that Mary was at the feet of Jesus. She knew where to go because she had been there before, even when there wasn't tragedy happening in her life. And so what happens? What do we do when tragedy strikes in our lives? Where do we go when life comes crashing in on us and life feels broken and overwhelming? Well, they go to the place where they know where to go, and it's at the feet of Jesus. And at this time, Martha, no matter how hard she tried, whenever you think about this, here's the situation. Martha, she's the doer. She had nothing she could do in this situation. She had nothing left to give. She could not fix this situation. She couldn't step in and perform and do something. Martha is looking at this situation and she's desperate. She's got nothing. She can't bring her brother back. It's not something she can do. And you probably know the rest of the story. When you're at the feet of Jesus, just like Martha and Mary in this situation. You realize it's not about what you can do or what you can't do. You just suddenly become more aware of what Jesus is actually doing in your life. And that by itself is a gift. And this is what Jesus is doing in this situation, verse 38. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he had been there for 4 days." Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" When he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out, and his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and cloth around his face. And he said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." See, life is full of competing priorities, never-ending to-do lists. The ducks keep coming, but in all of it, God's doing something bigger. No matter what you have to do this week, no matter what your priorities are this week, God is doing something bigger in your life, and you might not even see it. And I don't want you to be so distracted in life that you miss it. See, don't miss what's better. Don't miss Jesus. He's standing right there. He's in your living room, and he's waiting to spend time with you. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for this opportunity, this reminder that we have, that you desire more than anything else. You don't desire our service or that we check off the box for you. All of those things are good things, but what you desire is our hearts. What you desire is time with us, that you care about us so much, that, Lord, at the end of the day, what you really want is just to know us and for us to know you. And so, Lord, I hope and pray that we would have our priorities straight, that as we understand and recognize and realize that all the things that happen in this world, all of them are important, but at the end of the day, they're not eternal. There's one thing that is never going to fade, and it's this connection that we have with you, and it's your kingdom that is going to continue to reign. And so, Lord, help us see it, help us live in it and in that reality, and help it, I pray, may it change our perspective about all the things and all the priorities that we have in life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.